Man, I got it swag. My hat matching my bag. You know I'm poppin' tags. 'Cause man, I got that swag. Man, I got that swag. My hat matching my bag. You know I'm poppin' tags. 'Cause man, I got that swag when I serve. Now watch me something swag. I'm on hypnotic, exotic, big polo on my body. Got a bag, girl, Versace, and a friend right behind me, and I'm swag. I'm surfing, I'm swag, I'm surfing, I'm swag, I'm surfing, I'm clean like this detergent. I'm controlling.
You're probably wondering, Nick, how'd you get so rich? How are you so famous? How are you so good at everything? Well, I'm gonna tell you today. Well, when I'm not enjoying my favorite pastimes like saving orphans from burning buildings and taming bears in Alaska, I tend to ask myself philosophical questions like, why am I here? What am I here for? What is my purpose? Well, ladies and gentlemen, luckily I found the answer to these questions. I believe that the meaning of life is to approach every situation with what I'd like to call the attitude of champions.
Yeah, I'm smoking strong, and you know I'm on 'cause I'm swag.
You're probably wondering, what is the attitude of champions? Well, essentially, it's what I think is the best way to live life. This attitude that I've come up with is comprised of 4 distinct stages. So stage 1 is recognizing that you have immense potential. Stage 2 is recognizing that there is meaning in every situation. Stage 3 is recognizing that only we can help ourselves. And stage 4 is recognizing that by setting and completing goals, we can bring ourselves happiness. I like to believe that we can unlock ourselves to the attitude of champions in one simple step, and that's realizing that we all have immense potential. Viktor Frankl believed that life is characterized by 2 things. One is potentialities, and the other is realities. Any potentiality which we choose to put in the effort to actualize can and will become reality for us. The first step of this attitude is realizing that the world is for the taking. Often we get inside our own heads and limit ourselves mentally. When we do this, we shut ourselves away from our full potential without even giving ourselves a chance. Though you might be limited by factors out of your control, if you believe that you can do anything, you'll be much more successful in whatever you want to do. I know it's cliche, but we've all heard the saying that if you aim for the moon, you will fall among the stars. As I'm sure we've all felt while working on this project, trying to form a conception of the meaning of the entirety of life is an extremely daunting task. However, Viktor Frankl would argue that the necessity to find a super meaning is a common misconception. Instead, Frankl's teachings encourage people to look for meaning situationally rather than seek out a super meaning. So, what do these situations look like? According to Frankl, we can discover meaning in 3 different ways. 1, by creating a work or a deed. 2, by experiencing something or encountering something. And 3, by the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering, page 111. As I'm sure you noticed from this short quote, these categories are incredibly broad and can apply to almost any situation given to you. If we choose to make an effort to discover meaning in life, whatever the situation is can become meaning. And yes, I do believe that it can happen as easily and as actively as it sounds. As mentioned earlier, this doesn't mean only finding meaning during the good times. As a matter of fact, Frankl focuses most intently on deriving meaning from times of struggle. As a logotherapist, Frankl encountered a patient who had recently lost his spouse. Frankl wondered himself, now how could I help him? What should I tell him? Page 113. However, instead of telling the patient anything, Frankl asked him, what would have happened if you had died first and your wife would have had to survive you? Quickly, he realized that she would have suffered terribly. Therefore, the meaning of that patient's suffering was clear. By having outlived his spouse, he spared her the suffering that she would have experienced had he passed away first. In this situation, all it took for the experience to become meaningful was an acceptance of responsibility and a change in attitude. If you have the capability to also derive meaning from times of struggle and hardship, along with the easier situations, you're well on your way to becoming a champion. Stage 3 comes in the form of a particular realization which many people struggle to come to. Early in the year, we read Thomas Nagel's essay titled, What It Is Like to Be a Bat. As a quick reminder, his essay was written as an attempt to denounce the physicalist argument that all is physical and everything can be explained physically. Nagel's argument is best summed up by a quote that reads, "Now we know that most bats perceive the external world primarily by sonar, or echolocation. But bat sonar, though clearly a form of perception, is not similar in its operation to any sense that we possess, and there's no reason to suppose that it is subjective like anything we can experience or imagine." Basically, his point is that we can learn everything about a bat, how their brain functions, how they hunt, how they move, etc. But we'll never understand what it is like to be a bat. We can only imagine what it is like to be a bat using objective knowledge. It applies in the same way for human beings. We can never understand what it is like to be another human being, and nobody can ever understand what it's like to be us. Because our existence is subjective, nobody else can know what our aspirations are or what gives us meaning. Therefore, if we want something changed in our life, we need to realize that it's only our responsibility to make that change, and only we can understand how to make that change. The last step of the Attitude of Champions is extremely similar to Aristotle's philosophy, and this one's rather simple. As humans, Aristotle believes that we've been blessed with the capability of a rational soul, which gives us the potential to pursue virtue. In this moral or intellectual greatness, we're able to find what Aristotle defined as the meaning of life, which is happiness, or eudaimonia. According to Aristotle, now such a thing, happiness, above all else, is held to be, for this we choose always for itself and never for the sake of something else, but honor, pleasure, reason, and every virtue we choose indeed for themselves, but we choose them also for the sake of happiness. To put this in more straightforward day-to-day terms, I see Aristotle's conception of activity and virtue as comparable to goal setting and the importance to me of having an agenda and getting things done and dreaming. Therefore, in the simplest sense, I believe that we should strive to achieve these goals we set for ourselves because in this way, we can find happiness. The man who most encapsulated my attitude of champions was my papa, Dave Reeves. Papa was an extremely special man. Throughout my entire life, I'd heard the stories of my papa, the athlete, the motivational speaker, the school counselor. And to give a quick resume of my grandfather, he played and coached baseball at Western Michigan University. He was a motivational speaker who would give speeches to students in the local schools and in the neighborhood, and he was just an all-around stand-up guy. Unfortunately, though, at a very young age, Papa was diagnosed with progressive multiple sclerosis. For those of you who don't know, multiple sclerosis is an incurable disease in which the immune system essentially eats away at the protective covering of nerves, causing paralysis. "Why can't he walk?" I would innocently ask. I couldn't understand why the strapping baseball player and coach from Family Pictures was so feeble. I felt frustrated with the fact that I never knew my Papa in his prime condition. And Papa seemed resigned to his worsening health condition each time we visited. Why isn't there a cure? I wanted to know. The last time I ever spoke to my grandfather, he told me, "I'll send you a text message from heaven." He passed shortly after. A few days later, though, imagine my mother's surprise as she hears me humming the tune to take me out to the ball game. Startled, she told me that Papa was humming the same song, with her by his side right before he died. To us, this was no coincidence. Rather, it was Papa's promised text message from heaven.
On the field are his parents Shannon and Andy Prida, his brother Alex, and his cousins Madeline and Liam Reeves, with their father David Reeves. Earlier today, the Reeves family announced the re-gift to Coach's Recognition Wall to be constructed at Robert J. Bob Stadium through the David Reeves Memorial Baseball Fund. For more information on making a donation to the David Reeves Memorial Fund, please contact Jim Culhane in the Mike Gary Athletic Fund office at 269-387-3057.
For a 9-year-old kid, as you might imagine, it's extremely hard to appreciate the character of the man. However, in my teenage years, I've been able to do a lot of thinking about the man my Papa was. Despite his physical appearance not being the same as it was before he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, his spirit truly never waned. Whenever I think of a way to sum up the essence of who he was, I remember the times he would attempt to abandon his scooter and even try and walk a short distance. Often, this venture would end with a hard crash to the floor. However, each time he would get himself up and with a Rye Baseball's player's smile, saying, "Safe." I can confidently say that my Papa loved nothing more than to be with his family. He never passed upon an opportunity to spend time with us, or maybe even just give us a little laugh. I remember Papa would have his grandchildren sit up on his lap, and he would tell us stories which all ended with a great life lesson every time. Even in his declining state, my Papa truly understood his potential and how he could make his own suffering meaningful by setting an amazing example for the people around him. He took it on as his own responsibility to prepare his children and grandchildren for a world without him. Undeniably, even in a state of constant pain, he experienced happiness in the fact that he made an impact on each and every one of us. However, when my Papa laid the blueprints for me, I didn't administer the attitude of champions until later in my life. During my middle school years, everything seemed easier for my friends. Academics, athletics, focus. Sure, things made more sense when I finally learned that ADHD contributed to my struggles, but a prescription medicine didn't solve all my problems for me. I always said I wanted things to happen. For example, I wanted to begin eating healthier. I wanted to become a better student. I wanted to get better at hockey. But my issue was I never put in the work to improve my state of being. Mentally, the summer going into freshman year was incredibly taxing for me. Everyone I knew was placed in a higher class than me, and I felt academically behind. I had recently been dropped by my friends, and I was extremely unhappy with my physical image. However, this summer, I stopped focusing on what was wrong with me and stopped the pity party, and instead began to focus on how I could better myself. This was Papa's ultimate mantra with his baseball players, and one that I took to heart as I matured. Everything changed for me when my attitude towards life changed. Instead of focusing on how I was falling behind my peers, I began to think about the potential I had to improve myself. I adopted a newfound optimism towards life and the opportunities I was given in life. However, a mere change in attitude is just the first step. Like I said, for a long time I sat in this pity party which my life had become turned into: bad grades, no friends, bad at hockey, etc. However, during the summer going into freshman year, I finally figured out the meaning of my current situation. I realized that I had the opportunity to make a drastic self-improvement and better myself. However, the most important step in this process is actually getting the damn thing done. I needed to realize that no one else was going to improve my situation for me, and I instead had to take it into my own hands to do so. That summer I became working out and really watching what I eat. I began training for the upcoming hockey season, and moving into freshman year, I decided to stop playing it safe and instead start showing up ready and showing up to win. I vowed that I wouldn't let my high school of 4,000 kids intimidate me, and instead I'd embrace the opportunities in front of me. Lastly, when I was younger, on the way out of the door for school, my dad would always tell me to either execute on greatness or approach each day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. Sure, he was being a little funny, but I always felt like there was a deeper meaning to the send-off. What did this mean? I came to the understanding that it meant setting lofty goals for myself, and as well as doing the little things right, situating myself correctly in the classroom, advocating for myself, and taking advantage of support resources where I need them. Freshman year, I wrote a letter to myself, which reads, "Dear Nick Prida, hello, future self. The most important things to me are my family, my friends, school, and hockey. I never want my relationships with family to end, and I want to continue to be outgoing and compassionate. In the next 4 years, I want to continue to receive good grades, and I want to go to a good college. 2 qualities I like about myself is how I treat friends and how I am compassionate." And at the end, I write to myself, if any of these things are not happening, get your shit together. This being said, in this point in my life, I'm the happiest I've ever been. And this attitude of champions, which my papa inspired upon me, has done wonders for me in my life so far. So for the success that I've had in the last couple years of my life, I give full credit to my papa and his champion attitude. And finally, for my papa, who this project is dedicated to, I know that this was a long text message back to you, but I'm sending it straight up to you there in heaven. I couldn't be more thankful for the example you've set for me, and without it, I'm certain that I would not have achieved the success I've had as I've grown and matured. Papa, I love you.
Please rise while we do our take on Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the Bob. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if we ever get back. Well, it's root for the Broncos. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.